This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
I think the pretense that Theresa May is in a rock-solid position as leader of the Conservative Party and as our Prime Minister is something that everybody in the Tory Party has tried to make us think ever since the general election. I don't believe that particularly to be the case, and I think she may be in for a sort of autumn of whispering campaigns. At least that's what I thought. Maybe it's not going to be that whispery, because Lord Harris of Peckham, him of Carpet Right, and I think probably the biggest retailer of carpets we've ever had in this country, a man who has been a Conservative all his life, a man who had a deputy treasurer position in the Conservative Party, a man who was given hundreds of thousands of pounds, it may even run into seven figures, in terms of donations to the Tory Party, and a man who, interestingly, has a whole series of Harris Academy schools, both at primary level and at secondary level, a lot of them in London, and some of them, by the way, doing phenomenally well. So a very, very respected figure in the business community, and he really has launched one heck of a broadside against the Prime Minister. He said that she is a hopeless leader of a weak government. He even says, despite, sort of 50-plus years of supporting the Conservatives, that Britain would be better off with an administration like Blair's in the early years. He also says she wasn't very good when she was Home Secretary. And he goes on further to make comments that I know are resonating with some in the business community, that she doesn't appear to be very business-friendly either. That an awful lot of her speeches and talk, she's very interventionist. She kind of accepts the status quo that we have with the big corporate companies having huge influence over the political process. Doesn't seem to understand how small and medium-sized entrepreneurs get cracking and get off the ground. Now, Mrs May herself was on Test Match Special the other day, which she rather likes. Maybe more of that in the course of the next hour, because I rather like that too. And she defended herself by saying she's not robotic. But I think that what Harris may have done here is he may have opened a little bit of a dam. I have a feeling that as we run up to the Tory Party conference, there is going to be a lot of speculation about whether she's the right person to be Prime Minister, and whether, as Lord Harris of Peckham suggests, she's mishandling Brexit. So I want to know from you, should Theresa May stay as our Prime Minister or not? Is it a case of it could all be over by Christmas? I don't know. I think she needs to, certainly, even before Harris had said this, my feeling was she needs to get a grip pretty damn quickly. She doesn't look in control. And I feel that when you've got a situation where the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Philip Hammond, and the Foreign Secretary, Boris Johnson, have spent much of the summer directly arguing and contradicting each other, it doesn't look like, does it, anybody is really in control. Harris also said that she's no Thatcher. Well, that's perhaps not a very fair comment in one way, because why should she even pretend to be Thatcher? But in policy terms, what Harris said was that at least with Thatcher, whether you liked it or not, you knew where you stood. And with May, she chops and changes her mind. So it's a really damning interview. It appeared in yesterday's Times, and I think, my own view, unless she gets a grip, there'll be a lot more of that between now and the Tory Party conference in a few weeks' time. And Stefan is calling me from Northern Ireland. So where, of course, Stefan, the DUP have 10 MPs, without whom she wouldn't be governing at all, would she?
No, she wouldn't. I believe that she should not stay. I believe she's weakening the peace process in Northern Ireland.
Do you? Is that because of the Brexit negotiation, or how do you see that?
Yes, with Brexit, with the majority of Northern Ireland voting Remain, and her opinion on social issues compared to the Democratic Unionist Party, I believe it's weakening the peace process. And as a unionist myself, I fear that a united Ireland is becoming a more of a possibility for a lot of people in Northern Ireland, and I believe Theresa May is a large cause of that, along with the insides of the Democratic Unionist Party itself.
Yeah, I mean, look, as far as the Irish border and Brexit's concerned, Stefan, I think the one person causing problems there is actually, I mean, in my view, it's Mr. Barnier, because most people in the north and the south say, yeah, of course we want, a frictionless, if possible, border. It seems to be the EU that are putting up objections to that and don't want to have a custom-free, tariff-free deal. Why do you say that her view on social issues is posing a problem?
With the Democratic Unionist Party opposing abortion and gay marriage, and a lot of people in Northern Ireland is the most religious in the United Kingdom.
Yes.
And have very strong religious views on abortion and homosexual marriage. I believe that the difference in opinion can start to create a problem between the two parties and weaken her already weak government.
Okay. So, Stefan, if she was to go as leader, if Lord Harris has started off something that snowballs, and no one knows whether it will, but there is a possibility that it will, I presume, given what you've said about Northern Ireland and its different religious and social stances, I presume you'd like Jacob Rees-Mogg, I presume, as Prime Minister, given his views on these subjects. I don't hold any religious views, so I don't really have opinion. Well, I don't have opposition to social views. No, I mean, but you weren't talking for yourself, Stefan. You were talking about Northern Ireland as a whole. I mean, would it be easier if Jacob Rees-Mogg was Prime Minister? Is really the question I'm asking you.
Yes, probably.
Probably. Well, I'm not sure that Jacob is going to become the next Prime Minister, although I think quite a lot of people are putting money on him. Stefan, thank you. And Stefan, concerned that may perhaps this relationship, if I can put it that way, that she has with the DUP, Stefan hinting it may actually not last. And, there we are. Well, before Lord Harris gave this interview, I was in Berlin on Friday, and I was there trying to push a message that actually having a tariff-free deal is more in Germany's interest than it is ours, because they sell us an awful lot of motor cars. But I was asked about Theresa May at that press conference on Friday. Here's what I said. She's not the warmest or most humorous person that has ever occupied number 10 Downing Street, and she was, of course, a Remainer. And she struggled when Jeremy Paxman asked her 4 times in one interview. He said, well, Prime Minister, having been a Remainer, are you now a convert to the Leave cause? And on 4 occasions she sort of said, well, we'll do what the will of the people asked us to do, which I thought was a pretty unconvincing performance from a Prime Minister who was trying to win an election on the basis that Brexit meant Brexit. I would say this to you, being as objective, and I really mean this, as I can be, I would say this. Number one, she has to stamp her authority on the party and do so pretty damn quickly. Because we've had a period of time where on a weekly basis the Chancellor of the Exchequer and the Foreign Secretary contradict each other on virtually every issue. So it looks rudderless. She must assert her authority on the party, and I think she has to assert her authority on the renegotiation process, where frankly we are now up against plain pig-headedness from virtually everybody in Brussels, who are being unwilling to bend and who seem, as I say, to put the interests of preserving their projects and lifestyle in Brussels above that of the interests of all the countries of Europe. And I would say to you, if she doesn't do those 2 things, doesn't get some sense of order back into her own party and direction back into where the renegotiations are going, then I think the whispering campaign will go from being something that is being done in private to being done in public, and she might not last till Christmas. Well, that's my view. I said it on Friday in Berlin. That was before Lord Harris came out. Should May stay, should May go, unless something really big changes, then it doesn't really matter what I think. Unless something really big changes, I think she will go. I think there are a lot more Lord Harrises lining up there. I could be wrong. John, in Ravenscourt Park, what do you think? Should May stay as Prime Minister? Is she doing a good job in your view?
I think, all right, Nigel, yeah. All right, what I think overall, I think she should stay, because at the end of the day, I think the people that should go are the people that are trying to, cause disruption, and they're the people that voted Remain that I'm really surprised are actually still in the cabinet. People like, what's his name, the Chancellor. And
Philip Hammond, yeah.
Yeah, and the Home Secretary, Amber Rudd.
Yes.
I honestly think they should go. I think that she's not going to get very far if she's got people like that. And I think she should have people like Jacob Rees-Mogg. Because people like you and people like Jacob, people like Dave Davies, they respect a sovereign democracy, and that is what we voted.
Oh, John, it won't be me. It won't be me. She won't even speak to me. I mean, I'm not important enough or posh enough for her to even talk to, but that's not the point. The thing is, John, if you make these points about Hammond and Rudd, she was the one that picked them.
Yeah, that's what I just don't understand. I mean, also the thing is, she was, if you replace her, someone might just. I mean, the powers that be, they're giving so much prominence to people like Blair, and they're trying to undermine people like Theresa May. She's not really the power that she's not the powers that be. People have to understand where the real power is. It's like the EU. It's just a collection of lobbyists and vested interests, and. But I think she should stay. You think she should stay?
But you think she should stay, John? But you think she needs to make some big changes?
Yeah, definitely. I think she should. Get people like Jacob and. People like Jacob Rees-Mogg in cabinet. Yeah.
John, thank you very much indeed. Well, John thinks she should stay, but needs to make some changes. And I think unless she does make those changes, she's going to be forced out by her own side. And you have to say, she's not looking particularly happy in this job, is she? Right now, you're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, and it's 11:15. Tory grandee, Lord Harris of Peckham, been in the party 50 years, held position, given them hundreds of thousands of pounds, helped them set up academy school. I mean, really a big beast in the Tory party, and he's really given the Prime Minister a serious kicking. He said she is a hopeless leader of a weak government. He even thinks the country will be better off with a sort of early Blair years type administration. Said she's not decisive, she's no Thatcher, doesn't understand business. I mean, it goes on and on and on, and I'm asking you, should May stay? And my own view, as I put last Friday when I was in Berlin, is that unless she acts very quickly to take control, events will overtake her and she'll be swept away. And I get from Caroline on Twitter with a symbol with a Lib Dem logo. Hi LBC, your presenter was guest speaker at a Nazi rally on Friday. Oh please, Caroline, what is it that if you go and stand with a candidate who has a conservative view, that somehow if you don't like it, you just label it, oh, she must be far right and extremist. And yes, you're right, her grandfather was a Nazi. Do you know what? It's very difficult in German politics or business or industry to find anybody who hasn't had a family link going back to either Hitler's time or Kaiser Bill's, and they weren't too nice in those years either. So honestly, some of this stuff, and this is, I think, in many ways, what political debate in this country, sadly, has sunk to. That rather than dealing with an issue, both sides hurl abuse at each other. And I genuinely am going to try, on this programme on Sunday mornings, to have civilised debate with people, whether I agree with them or disagree with them. The last time Alistair Campbell and I met, we were sitting on the couch of Good Morning Britain with Piers Morgan it was as a sort of ringmaster, and it was virtually a boxing match. But here, I let Alistair make his point of view, and that's what I'm going to try and do. Michelle is calling me from Fulham. Michelle, is Theresa May going to survive as Prime Minister?
I really hope not.
You hope not?
I hope not.
Yeah.
I like her. Don't get me wrong. I like her. However, she has lost control. She has not done anything forward-moving for Brexit. And I do not think she is actually capable of doing it for us.
I mean, I'd agree, Michelle.
I haven't seen the capability.
It's very dithery, isn't it? I mean, the fact that she became Tory Prime Minister and said, Brexit means Brexit, and it then took her 9 months, if you remember, to trigger Article 50. I thought was really, very, very indecisive. So what Michelle's really you're saying is she's not a bad person, she's just not capable, yeah?
I don't believe I've seen capability, no. We're in the 21st century. We cannot afford to have a Jacob Reed-Moss, however you say his name. But there is somebody who's very talented, who has much European experience, who is pro-Brexit, who is capable and intelligent and able to do the job that is available for us to elect.
Certainly, Michelle, if Theresa May was to stumble and be pushed or to fall or to walk away or to claim ill health, Michelle, or whatever it was, and that wasn't a great line, there'd be a whole list of people. But Michelle's point's interesting because actually Lord Harris said very much the same thing when he was talked about her rise to the premiership. Harris said he didn't think she had it in her. So the deeper you go into this Lord Harris of Peckham interview, actually the more damning the whole thing becomes. When in Parliament, May is strong and secure. Outside, she's weak and wobbly, is what I get by text. May was the wrong Tory choice. Leadsom should have been leader. Charles in Birmingham, is May going to stay? Should she stay?
I believe we should leave May in power until March 2019, till the end of Brexit. Because if you get rid of her now, you create more instability. And if you put somebody else in charge, they might not be happy with the negotiations we're doing. So we've got to try and make her strong, and she needs to get herself strong with a party, and her party need to get behind her instead of having a go. Because if the party do not have a go, keep having a go like this guy did, they're going to upset Brexit. And they've got to understand this.
Charles, the one thing...
At the end of 19...
Yeah. Charles, the one thing that really upset Brexit and led to instability and worry was something earlier on this year called the general election. Because not only did that take a lot of time out of the Brexit process, given that Article 50 had already been triggered, but it leads to a situation where in tomorrow's vote, an important vote in Parliament tomorrow on the so-called Great Repeal Bill, but she can only win that vote now if the Democratic Unionist Party support her. And cynics would argue, Charles, that given that they've secured another £1 billion for Northern Ireland, they probably will vote with her. So I think she herself, actually, Charles, has caused some of this instability. And you say we need to make her strong, was the comment you made to me. But I don't think in a situation like this you can actually make someone strong. They've either got it or they haven't, surely.
I think if you had the backing of a whole cabinet, none of them upset her, none of them come out having a go, nobody at all, give her the backing of 100%, like a workforce does to a boss, she probably would be strong, and this is a problem.
All right.
People keep undermining her.
All right, Charles, I've just appointed you. You are now the new modern-day Alistair Campbell, let's say. You've got total power. You are in charge of number 10 Downing Street. What has she got to do to stop a never-ending stream, as the Tory party conference approaches, of people like Lord Harris of Peckham criticising her? What's the one thing you would tell her to do?
Go and see the 22 committee and get him removed. Because I don't know whether that's the way you have to do it or not, but that's what's got to be done. She has to tell him to pull in line or resign with immediate effect. People that need to be got rid of. And that's what she's got to start doing, and bringing people in. Trouble
is, Charles, if you sack grandees like Lord Harris, who don't need to stand for election, and who are owed nothing, who don't need a career in politics, because he's done phenomenally well in business, and he's very committed to education. If you sack someone like that, you might find half a dozen of his mates resign in sympathy with him.
Well, that's fine if they're no good. You've got to bring other people in.
Charles.
That's fine, but that's the way you've got to do it. If you've got a bad worker, you've got to get rid of them, don't you?
Charles, it's tyrannical stuff coming from Charles from Birmingham. Charles, listen, thank you very much indeed for playing along with that. In one way, Charles is right. In one way, he is right, that she has to get control. You cannot, it seems to me, if you're going through this vitally important process of Brexit, you cannot have the Chancellor of the Exchequer and the Foreign Secretary openly contradicting each other week after week over the course of a summer. It just looks like she hasn't got that leadership ability. Now, maybe she can summon it up from somewhere inside herself, but if she doesn't, I'm sticking with my line. If she doesn't get a grip, number one of the cabinet and give a united face, and number two doesn't go to Brussels on October the 19th, which is the next big get-together of all 28 EU leaders, and actually say something really strong about Brexit. If those things aren't done, I don't think she can survive. Graham says May should leave, and so should we. Very good, Graham. Marty says government loved the fact that the left and right shout at each other instead of shouting at them. Well, that was my comment earlier about what's happening in politics now, where far less than debating things, we simply seem to be happy hurling abuse at each other, which is not much use. I wonder what Prakash in Camberwell thinks.
Hi.
Hello.
Good morning, Nigel.
Good morning. So is she a brilliant, strong leader in control and there for years to come?
Absolutely not.
Oh.
I don't think she can be redeemed either, and I know that's what you were asking the last caller.
Yes.
She can't be redeemed. I don't think she's got any future as a Prime Minister, and I'll tell you two reasons why. I think the first thing is, with respect to Brexit, she has completely mishandled the whole situation. I mean, she gave us this sort of this image that she was considering things very carefully 12 months ago and was developing a plan, and we all trusted her and all the rest of it. And what's now turned out is she had no plan, she's got no imagination, she's got no vision, she's got no strategic thinking, she's just working each day out one day at a time. She's got no destination on Brexit, and because she's got no destination, she's not going to get there. She's going to make a complete mess of it. The second thing is the general election, right? She went into this general election with a half-baked manifesto. She then that's now been discredited. So you've got a government in power with a discredited manifesto. The poor old Queen had to give a Queen's speech. It was so embarrassing. I mean, poor woman. She put the Queen through this pain of a program that had no substance to it, and now May is in power, but she's got nothing to say, and she's got no proposals to make. She is not taking this country anywhere.
Prakash, tell me something. Are you involved in politics in some way?
No, I'm not. No.
Well, you probably ought to be, because you put your points with great clarity, and your comments about the way she's handling Brexit and everything. I mean, do you say that as somebody who is naturally a Conservative supporter or not?
No, I'm a Labour supporter.
You're a Labour supporter, right.
I voted for Leave, but I voted for Leave for very different reasons from a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I think the reason... I think they'd like to get rid of her, but they can't get rid of her. And I think there's a malaise deep at the heart of Tory philosophical thinking at the moment. They don't know what their plan B is. They don't know who to replace her with. All the front benchers have been discredited themselves one way or another. Then there's Jacob Rees-Mogg, which is a potential candidate, and I know you're promoting him.
No, I'm not promoting him. What I'm saying is that he's somebody that I shared platforms with and worked with during the referendum, and I believe him, Prakash, to be a very honest, honourable politician. One last comment.
What he's saying, and he's offering more clarity than the rest of them are able to offer. I accept that. I suspect that the Tories need time to think about their plan B. Somehow they need to resurrect their own... Their thinking is very stale.
Well, they've got a lot of thinking to do. Prakash, thank you. Strong criticism from Labour voting and Leave voting, Prakash there. He thinks May's got to go. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 11:30 and... Carpet magnate and education boss Lord Harris of Peckham, lifelong Tory, has really put the knife into the Prime Minister, saying that she's a hopeless leader of a weak government. It's not pretty, and I'm saying, should May stay? My own view is that unless she makes some big changes and stamps her authority and gets a united cabinet and gets some real clarity in Brussels about where we're going, I think unless she does those things pretty quickly, there'll be a lot more Lord Harris of Peckhams that will come out of the woodwork between now and the Tory conference and perhaps beyond. I'm not sure she'll still be here at Christmas unless she gets a grip. Is it possible she can get a grip? Does she have that leadership ability within her? I don't know. I'm asking you that very question. Has May got what it takes? Can she? Come on, folks, tell me, can she reassert her authority? Let me know what you think. You can call 0345 6060 973. You can text at 84850. You can tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage and LBC. And for those watching us on Facebook Live, you can comment there too. Now, a story here. It's quite personal to me, really. When the referendum came, seemed to me that the simplest symbol of what we were arguing about was the British passport. So every time I did a big performance, I held up the passport. I did it in this very studio, actually, with Lord Heseltine, who looked pretty mortified when I did it. But my reason for holding up the passport was that the first two words on the British passport are, of course, European Union. I was saying, look, stop pretending that this club we're a part of, as you describe it, stop pretending that it's not a union that wants to be a state. Now, I emphasised the words European Union. I didn't really emphasise the fact that it was a burgundy colour and not, as it had been in years gone by, the deep navy blue. But, you know, for people of a certain age, that too was something that they objected to. Now we're told that post-Brexit UK passports, that there are two foreign companies, one believed to be French and one German, that are competing for what is nearly a £500 million contract to redo our passports. I think it would be... Well, let's see. There is a British company bidding, and the thought that future British passports post-Brexit, without the words European Union, and possibly back to our traditional navy blue colour, would be made in Europe. Do you know what? I couldn't really care less. I'm not very worried about it, but I'd rather they were made in Britain, really. Otherwise, people will tease me for the rest of my life. Back to Mrs May. Has she got what it takes to be a leader? Should she stay? Should she go? Is Lord Harris of Peckham right when he says she is hopeless? I wonder what Albert in Leeds makes of all that. Albert?
Good morning, Nigel.
Good morning. Good morning, good morning. So what do you think?
Well, I think Mrs May needs to look and blame the Treaty of Versailles. We left the Germans with no option but to restructure and rearm. Right. And then, after the Third Reich, we left with no option but to create the Fourth Reich or the common market.
Is that is that really how you see the European project?
Yeah, pretty much. They're doing extremely well out of it. They quietly keep beavering away, exporting, and tend to keep a background stance and leave the French to
Albert, whether you're right or not, and I suspect that at the time of the Treaty of Rome, I suspect the last thing on Germany's mind was taking the whole thing over, but effectively, where we are today, they are the biggest, strongest and most powerful country in the European Union. They have the most influence. They also pay the biggest bill. But either way, on the history of the European Union today, with a very strong German voice, we'd certainly agree on that. How does that help Mrs May? What is she to do in the face of all of this? And is she the right person to be our Prime Minister?
She's the right person to be our Prime Minister because there is really no alternative, and it doesn't matter because this is deja vu, isn't it? We always complain about our prime ministers, whoever they are, except for Harold Macmillan, of course, because I'm at that certain age now. But
Albert,
yeah.
That's fine to say that we like to complain, and of course, the higher up you go in any organisation, the more likely you are to attract criticism. It's kind of how it works in the world. So the Prime Minister being at the top is going to get a lot of criticism. But the point about this, Albert, is that this is somebody who's been a lifelong Conservative, and he's supported the party through all sorts of different leaders, Thatchers and Majors and Michael Howards, and he's supported the party loyally all the way through, but now he's broken ranks. Does what Lord Harris of Peckham has said, does it show that she's not actually fit, in your opinion, to be a leader?
Well, a person I use all the time, my carpet layer, who Lord Harris may know, being in the same profession, he follows much the same view as Lord Harris.
Yeah.
Who really, she needs to air his views and the statements he's made in the past to really belittle this man. Like, this is what we need to do to lots of these statesmen as they see themselves.
Right, so she should, I mean, I had a previous caller suggesting this, so Albert, she should basically boot Harris out of the party. Is that what you think?
No, leave him to go with his tail between his legs. Surely she can do that in another way.
Okay, no, Albert, fine. I mean, there's two callers now have said that in some way Lord Harris needs dealing with by Theresa May. I'm not sure that's actually going to work, folks, but there we are. Theresa May will prove to be an effective PM, and her moaning critics should behave themselves, says Richard. Hi, Nigel. Lord Harris has a new book launching soon. Might explain his intervention yesterday. Blatant free publicity, says Phil. Do you know what, Phil? I don't think Lord Harris needs free publicity. I don't think, the prospect of making a few quid on a book, I don't think, given his business career, is particularly going to excite him. I honestly think the best chance we now have of Brexit actually happening and not being wrecked by the Remainers is to keep Theresa May. I get on Twitter, and there are certainly quite a few Conservative MPs who are Eurosceptics that do take that view. They think she has to stay. They worry that if she goes or is toppled, the Tory party would relaunch itself into a civil war, a rerun of the referendum, but going on within their own party, and that could lead to huge instability. And that's the only reason she's still there post the election, that is the fear. That is the fear in the House of Commons. I think people like Lord Harris are outside of that day to day, and they're looking at the big picture. People like Harris who are in business don't want transitional arrangements, don't want to muck about. They want us to leave the EU as quickly as possible so we can get on with the rest of our lives. So you've got two very different kinds of Tory supporter here. One involved in the day-to-day machinations of Westminster and worried about internal civil war there, and the other, the more, step-back position of a senior businessman like Harris, saying, just for goodness sake, will you get on with it? We've got a caller from Australia. Ian, now we're going to be in Australia very soon, and England have just won a test series, so maybe we're favourites. Will we come to Brisbane for the first test? I don't know. Good morning.
Absolutely, mate. Brisbane, Australia. Yep, that'll be the first test.
It's normally the first test, and of course I
will be there. I will be there. I can assure you, supporting the Barmy Army.
I have been with the Barmy Army on tour before, and it is great fun.
Once or twice.
Now, what time of the day is it there, Ian?
It's 8:45 at night. So good evening.
Good evening, Australia. So,
yes.
Should Theresa May stay? Or is Harris right? Do they need somebody better to lead the country through this crucial period?
I was listening to a good friend and colleague of yours the other day.
Yeah.
I think he goes by the name of James O'Brien.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, I tend to disagree with a lot of what he says, but the other day he asked a question and he said, what does Theresa May stand for? Mm-hmm. And I supported obviously leaving the European Union. I support the Conservatives. But I honestly couldn't tell you what she stands for. She's never explained her reasons for changing her mind on Brexit. She was a Remainer.
Yep.
She's never told us why she now supports leave. I honestly, it might sound a bit cynical, and you'll probably agree. I think she's just a typical career politician playing it safe.
Oh, God, you're so cynical, Ian, really.
That's honestly what I think, and I think you probably agree as well.
I do. To some extent, Ian, I do. I don't think she believes in very much at all. I agree with you. And it's really interesting. During the election...
I don't know what she stands for. I do not know what she stands for.
During the campaign, Ian, in one of the interviews, Jeremy Paxman asked her 4 times, as a Remainer, do you now believe in Brexit? And not once did she say yes. She just said, we're carrying out the will of the people. So, Ian, is the answer, and you're a Conservative supporter and you're a Brexit supporter, do you think she'll still be there at Christmas?
Yeah.
You do?
I hope not. I hope not. I was actually a UKIP supporter, but in the general election, I would have voted for the Conservatives.
Right.
Tactically, basically, you know, but
you want a leader. You want a leader that believes in something, yeah.
Absolutely, you know, absolutely. Get the mog in, I reckon.
And when are you back in the UK? You're obviously working in Australia.
Actually, I am. Yeah, I've actually lived here for a few years now.
Right.
You know, actually, I wanted to call up an hour ago when you were talking about immigration, but that's a different topic now.
It is. It is.
I'm actually flying back next weekend.
Okay.
The first. There's a bit of a family reunion going on and
very
all
good.
that sort of stuff.
Very good. Well, Ian, thank you. It's not often we get calls from Australia. Thank you. I had lots of phone calls in my weekday night show from America and other parts of the world. I think that's the first one from Oz that I've had since I started working at LBC. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show exclusively here on LBC. It's 11:46. We're discussing whether May should stay or go. But first, I've loved radio all my life, and I've been an LBC listener since the 1970s, but I've had to admit, you know, to the bosses before I signed up here that there was one other particular radio show that I've been a fan of, and since 1970 I've been listening regularly to Test Match Special, and so Henry Blofeld had been there for, I think, 1972 he joined. And it's a really interesting thing that when you follow a presenter, when you follow a radio show, and you follow it year after year, it actually becomes a part of your life. And I was listening live yesterday when Henry signed off after nearly half a century of doing Test Match Special, and I felt sad. I felt there was a bit of a gap. I know that Henry Blofeld will not be retiring. He's about to do a theatre tour round the United Kingdom, but I want to pay tribute to it. I mean, anyone that can be on a radio show for nearly 50 years, wow, it takes some doing, and I'm going to miss him. But back to Lord Harris of Peckham putting the boot into the Prime Minister, saying she's hopeless and she's leading a weak government. I mean, it doesn't get much stronger than that, does it, from somebody who's been a major donor and supporter of the party over the years. Is this the first break? Are others going to come out over the course of the next few weeks and months and say she needs to go? Or actually, is she going to show that she's got leadership qualities that until now have been somewhat hidden? I wonder what Cynthia in Guildford thinks. Good morning.
Good morning, Nigel. Nice to speak to you. I listen to you from 7 till 8 in the evening, so it's nice to listen to you again on a Sunday morning.
Well, thank you very much, Cynthia.
Yeah, great. I've just been listening, obviously, to it now, and the one thing that nobody has actually said at the moment is if... I know Theresa May is obviously undecisive, and I've been a Conservative supporter all my life, and I find that I feel that she's not very strong, and I think she dithers. However, if she was to go in the next sort of few months or whatever, what bothers me most of all is that obviously somebody would step in and take over, but then I have a feeling that the left or the Labour Party or the Remoaners could turn round and say, well, you haven't got a mandate for Brexit. You haven't, you know, and I wonder then if they will keep, because they are getting so vicious and so strong, that they will keep demanding another election, and we could end up with Jeremy Corbyn, and that's the one fear that I have. That's why I feel that although I'm not happy about it, I really feel that she's got to stay.
Well, Cynthia, the circumstances of her being replaced, I think, are the key to understanding why fewer people so far have said what Lord Harris of Peckham has said. Namely, if there was one candidate who could be made the leader by anointment, without there having to be a contest, do you know something, Cynthia? It would have happened, in my view, already. Because I think a lot of them feel, and some of them like May and some of them don't. You know, I've yet to meet anyone who's told me she's really a good leader. But so what they fear, Cynthia, is there would not be, you know, a coronation. There'd be a contest. it would reopen. And, I'm sure that, down in Guildford, you meet Conservatives who've got very UKIP-y tendencies.
Yes, that's true. Well,
and you probably get some Blairite ones as well,
I mean, who think UKIP, I must be honest.
But I mean, that's the truth of it, isn't it? That actually, within the Tory party, there are UKIPers, and there are and on Europe there are Blairites, and they've just about managed to keep this whole thing together through the referendum. So they fear that opening up. As for Labour attacking them, well, of course, Gordon Brown became Prime Minister, didn't he, without winning an election, but that wouldn't bother them. Yeah, they'd scream and shout, but if the Tory party was stable under a new leader and the deal with the DUP was fine, they'd be there. Cynthia, what you've pointed out, and thank you very much for calling, what Cynthia there has pointed out is the real dilemma, I think, that faces particularly Conservative MPs. They're really scared that there's nobody obvious to take over, nobody that could actually unite both wings of the party and be seen to be the right person to get on with Brexit. So it's a pretty difficult spot. Margaret says on Facebook, I wanted her to be PM, but she is so unsecure that, sorry, she must go. Irene says Britain was respected when Margaret Thatcher was PM, although I didn't agree with her or her policies, but history's proved her right. Greg says it doesn't really matter whether May stays or goes. It won't stop Labour winning the next election. And the passport comment, well, do you remember earlier I was saying that there are two foreign companies bidding to make the new British passports post-Brexit? It's a contract that's worth 490 million sterling. There's one British bidder too. And Gary has responded. I think Gary, with some passion, is saying our blooming passports should be made here. Everybody needs to buy Britain and buy British. Okay, Gary, I thought somebody would. Listen, I'd rather they were made here too, really. Of course I would, but it's not, I don't think, a great burning issue. Tim in Battersea, come on, tell me that she's a great Prime Minister and that she needs to stay.
Can't do it, Nigel. I'm afraid. I think she's not only a very poor Prime Minister, I think she's dangerous Prime Minister.
Do you?
I think that Brussels couldn't have a more ideal Prime Minister in England than they've got right now. And she's deeply insecure, as has been throughout her Home Secretary reign, and now, she rules behind closed doors. She's afraid to actually be robust with her cabinet, and she radiates insecurity to the country and to the world, but especially to Brussels. And I think the sooner she goes, the better. Before Christmas.
It'll all be over by Christmas, Tim. Yeah, well,
I hope so.
Well,
I hope so.
I think it depends, doesn't it? It depends if there are more, Lord Harris of Peckhams waiting in the wings and prepared to say this. Yeah,
well, I agree, and I completely agree with him, and well done him, because he's one of our greatest businessmen, and now he's a great donor to schools and things. And,
he's done a cracking job with those schools too, Tim, hasn't he? I mean, some of the results that the Harris Academies have been producing are quite extraordinary, so full credit to him on that.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
And, there's a proper leader, but I'm afraid Theresa May is not, and I think she's dangerous. I think that somebody must lead this country with some passion and with some, somebody you can trust. I mean, Thatcher was not for turning, but old May is not for trusting.
Okay. Well, Tim, that's your soundbite, and I thank you for your call and your thoughts. And Tim, not a fan at all. And, there we are. Thatcher not for turning, May not for trusting. It's pretty strong stuff. Nigel, sadly, Mrs. May has no judgment, hence her choice of advisers and the resulting general election disaster. Bring on Jacob Rees-Mogg from Liz in London. Well, there's a lot of people out there. Any debate we have, some of you seem to think Jacob Rees-Mogg is the answer. Whether he is or whether he isn't, I don't know. I want to say sorry to all those callers who couldn't get through. I've done my best with callers and texters and tweeters and everybody else. And I did say last week, one thing we would try to do with this show is to look ahead at what we think is is coming up over the course of the next few weeks, and we discussed the German elections last week, and the reason specifically for picking up on Lord Harris of Peckham's comments is I'm going to predict this one is going to run and run. She's in real trouble unless she asserts her authority. Now, don't forget, you can listen to LBC whenever you want, wherever you are, by downloading the free LBC app on your mobile or tablet. It's the LBC Catch-Up app. You've been listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. I'm back tomorrow evening from 7. Coming up at 3, it's Stig Abel. But up next, it's Majid Nawaz.